have, and of course you've got the budget there, but a budget is nothing more than a plan. So you can have a stronger verb than have. You go with plan, and the attribution can wait till the second paragraph. The only attribution you really have there is I mean, if it's in the budget is the attribution. You don't have to have a bureaucrat saying it's in the budget. Okay, this one I had a problem with. I was cutting and pasting and didn't get them done right. So I'm going to put them all up there, and we'll show you a couple of ways to do this. This is an 18-word lead that's pretty decent right there. But I want to make the point that you don't just challenge the lead that's in the 20s, high 20s or 30s with budgets and deficits and those things, where any lead with city council, school, budget, those sorts of things is not going to be the sexiest lead you've ever written. You have to work with those, but you also want to work with a strong lead. What we have here in the first lead is we have a passive verb, is being sued by. Now sometimes a passive verb is necessary because it's important to put in your first few words of the lead what the story is about. The story is about the Bullpen Tavern and Restaurant. It's not about broadcast music. And if broadcast music is doing the action, you put in the passive verb, the active verb, which helps you tighten and helps strengthen it by giving you the active verb. But you've taken the emphasis off of the Bullpen Tavern. So the initial reaction, you see, okay, passive verb, I'm going to fix that. But can we fix it by making the Bullpen Tavern and Restaurant the actor? So we say the Bullpen Tavern and Restaurant in Rock Island violates, getting a stronger verb. Sued is not a bad verb. Violates copyright by playing music without paying for it. We're getting some strong verbs in here, not just the one. A lawsuit charge. And here we need to get the attribution, and it's nice to write a lead without attribution. But you keep the local institution as the actor. You also get the why in there up high, which this one had it at the end. The why puts the why a little bit. Well, you've got the copyright infringement. You're saying, okay, what are they doing? This says by playing music without. So you've gone. We can do a shorter version with the active verb. We can do a slightly longer version that tells you a little bit more, puts this as the actor, and uses an active verb. So you've got these different processes that you can kind of kick around and say, okay, can I get a stronger verb? Okay, well that causes a problem here. How can I fix that? And any one of those is better than and of course this is because what you're working with is better than the budget story lead. But you don't just settle for a lead with a passive verb, or you don't just settle for a lead that doesn't put the most important thing first. You want to see if I can make it better. Okay, what can we do here?
Change it to some SBC Ameritech Illinois customers.
What's that?
Chop off residential and small business customers to say some SBC Ameritech Illinois
Sure.
customers.
Everybody knows who their phone bill is, so you know right away, is that talking about me, the residential and small business?
I've never liked Will.
What's that?
I don't like Will C either. I
Will
think
C?
that's weak.
Will receive, that's a maybe a stronger verb there. Okay. And we're kind of trying to cram everything onto their lead. Can we say soon, within 60 days? That's within 60 days doesn't have a lot of words. But that's a way that you can cut it down. That might have cut too much. I might put that back in. But that's part of the process of rewriting the lead. You cut it and think, okay, is that specificity worth those words? Yes or no? You know, it kind of depends. Okay. What can we do here if you didn't already see it?
How do we know there's not another uncomfortable time of the year?
Yeah, kind of.
When I get cold in the winter.
Yeah,
I was
you know,
just gonna say.
sort of, yeah. Winter, and if you don't have the hay fever, it's not uncomfortable. Yeah, maybe it's uncomfortable because it's hot. Another problem. What?
You don't want to start with it is.
Yeah, the two weakest ways to start a story are its or theirs. Any phrase using it or their in the form of the verb to be, you know, those tie. Actually, there has a slight lead over its for the weakest phrases in the English language. You take our very weakest verb, combine it with a vague word, in this case, a pronoun with no antecedent, and in the other case, just there, this vague there. And in the case of theirs, you're also, or there were, there might have been, however you want to use it, you're also robbing your sentence of the subject. This one has a subject, it's just a weak subject. And so, any way you can, and there may be phrases, sentences, leads that's the best way to do it. Now, if it's not your lead, at least you've got an antecedent, and it might help add some clarity to, or some not clarity, but some streamlining to use it when it's got an antecedent. But in this case, you probably notice it. This just drives me nuts every time I do this. You can't discuss how weak its and theirs are without it coming up in your conversation. Anyway, that's the big one that I wanted to point out here. But you also, now I've got still that most uncomfortable time of the year. That's because I got the hay fever. Whoever suggested that, we can still talk about that. But by saying, okay, I want to get rid of the its, and you start working with it, you get your stronger verbs going. Now, do we need all of those? Do we need itch and overflow? Maybe we just need one of those or whatever. But the first thing is to banish the its. And in the process, you're looking for those stronger verbs. You're starting the sentence with the stronger, more relevant words that tell me what this story is about. Because if winter's the most uncomfortable time of the year to you, those first 8 words or so of the story haven't told you this is a story about hay fever. And if you don't have hay fever, maybe that's what you need. You want to see those first few things and read on.
Well, would that be the lead then? Hay fever season's here?
Could be.
Well, I was going to say, put it in with weave, just say that, hay fever suffers.
Yeah, that goes into the take an alternative approach. I didn't do that for this particular one. But those are the two things that you want to do in each time that you're working on a lead is see how can I improve the lead that I've written by working with that lead, with that approach, and can I take the better alternative approach and just say, because it's still 21 words. Maybe you say that, something that starts with hay fever, and you can get a 12, 13 word lead and have a little bit more punch that way.
The boss is moving.
What?
The boss is moving.
Yeah.
You can't have 20
Exactly. How about this one? What?
Yeah.
What?
First I read a federal breast.
Oh yeah, they're taking advantage of
Federal
federal
breast.
breast. Yeah,
Is that any
Opposed to
different?
state
State breast, yeah.
just the way that it's raised.
Liberty.
That's great.
Now you got me worried to see if my. The point here is, what's the story about? It's, it's about Illinois having different guidelines for keeping women from getting this test. And so you put them for, now, you could also decide it's about breast, not federal breast, it's about breast and cervical cancer screening, and do the alternative approach, trying to find a way to put that at the first. But fewer women in Rock Island County are taking advantage. You've got, again, 8 words, and I don't yet know what this is about. You know, it's about stringent guidelines, or it's about breast cancer and cervical cancer. You know, try and find your strongest words to put at the top. Again, that's one that, you pointed out. If you read that one aloud, you get to the federal breast, and you think, well, okay. How about here?
The last part of it's the strongest, the poorest areas are the wealthiest.
Yeah.
That's what the headline was written on
Yeah,
too.
the headline did say, did focus on it. And an important test to hold any lead to is, how many points am I making here? You're making 2 points. Median household incomes vary. Poor areas are next to rich areas. 2 points. Try and make 1 point in your lead.
But median household income is one thing, it can't vary.
Yeah. Well, it can't vary, and
I mean, it can vary in different areas.
yeah,
That's
but
not
we
what
don't
it
say
says.
that. We don't say that. And if we did, of course, first it would add more words to this paragraph, and secondly, is that surprising?
Right.
You know, so the point is, the poor areas are next to the rich areas. I'm going to cut this one in half. And we've got that census attribution in there, and that's not, you can save that till the second paragraph or so. We've got another it is here, I can see right away. What else is there? Yes,
2 it is.
speak up.
There's
Somebody say something?
There's actually 2 it is in there.
Yeah, 2 it is in this one.
Why don't you just say Jay Thomas is retiring up there?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we've got almost the same thing that we had before. We've got the no surprise statement leading it. Median income varies, beginning of the school year. Already? But this is about the guy retiring. So we've cut this for, by 15 words. Start with the guy's name. Oh, you can start with the college, Augustana President College, college president, if he's not well known enough, just use his name.
No, he's well.
So those are,
You don't want every lead to be hard news though,
No.
necessarily.
no, you don't. In fact, but that wasn't like a strong feature lead. It's beginning of school year for kids, but a good lead for that might be something along the lines of his reflection of what Augustana College was like 28 years ago when he became president, or something like that that makes it a feature lead. And then in the second or third paragraph, you say, and he's gone now, or leaving or something like that. Yeah, a very good point that in reading leads, it's easy for me to do the tinkering with the lead that was written. But the reporter is much better able, because you've got it in your notebook, to come up with the alternative lead. Sometimes it's there in the story. But those are things that you can also, in bouncing it off a colleague or off an editor, say, what do you think of this? I'm not really in love with it, but it's the best I've come up with so far. Something's wrong with it. Here, take a look. and kind of have that discussion, and then somebody points out, you know, do you need a hard news lead on this? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. That's one of the things to discuss. One of the things that I try to do is challenge every word of the lead. Your lead, you know, it's just 35 words. That was, well, I think, the longest lead we had up here. By the way, when I did this in another newspaper, we had a 44-word lead up there. You know, so you guys did a little better than that. But even a 35-word lead, you can, you know, in just a minute or two, challenge every word of that lead. Say, does it need to be there? Is that the strongest word possible? If you challenge every word of that lead, and if you wrote a 25-word lead or a 12-word lead, you can challenge every word a lot quicker. Challenge every single word of the lead to see, is this the strongest word I can use here? Especially challenge the verbs. Sometimes the verb to be is the most accurate verb and you have to use it. But sometimes you can use a stronger verb. And if so, find it, use it. And then there are other kind of secondary weak verbs, do, get, have. Can we, and I'm not talking just, obtain instead of get or possess instead of have. I'm not talking, just using a longer word that means the same thing. I'm talking about really look at what the action that happened in this story is, and can we do a stronger verb? Now maybe you can't. Maybe have, get, and do. Do is maybe the easiest one to replace, because you're going to say, okay, what did they do? Do is a vague verb that almost always can be replaced with something more specific, because do is this big universal umbrella type verb. We didn't do lunch, we ate lunch. That's a stronger verb. Not as cool, but strong. So a lot of attention, challenge every word, but spend the most time in your challenge on the verbs, because the verbs will give it some strength. Punctuation, to me, is a red flag. The ideal lead has one piece of punctuation, period. If you've got, and you saw in yesterday's paper, in the Sunday paper, you had two leads with two M dashes with something in between them. M dashes or commas with something in between them should be something that you look at automatically to see, can that come out? And sometimes the answer is no. I think in both of these cases yesterday, the answer was yes. But I'd already done the PowerPoint. Whoever wrote those doesn't get embarrassed. And I do apologize for anybody I embarrassed here. I tried to spread it around by getting several of them. But punctuation is something to always focus on and say, okay, does that need to be there? Is that introducing something that can wait until the next paragraph or farther in the story? Attribution, we already made the point about numbers. Numbers don't work well with prose. Sometimes we have to use them in our stories. For all the stuff that the rest of us in the business whine about USA Today, the big favor that they've done to the industry is make us use more graphics, and numbers work really well in graphics. Sometimes they do have to be in the story, but if they're in the lead, and there's more than one, that should be a red flag. I mean, if you've got one number in the lead, the budget deficit story, you need to say how big that budget deficit is. You don't want to be that unspecific just to keep the numbers out. But if you've got multiple numbers in your lead, that's a real red flag, okay? Look at your adjectives and adverbs. Are they necessary? Can you take that adverb and the verb and find a more specific verb that means the same thing and lose the adverb? Same with the adjective and noun. Can you find something more specific? Sometimes the answer is no. Sometimes that adjective or adverb is absolutely necessary, but there's something to challenge. Prepositions. conjunctions, do they introduce a phrase that is necessary? Do they introduce a phrase that you can replace with a single word? Again, sometimes the answer is no, but those are questions to ask. And sometimes a long lead is just the right lead. I think if you've got